Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And for everybody in the lobby who's watching, please feel free to join us from the to join the webinar itself. Hello, everybody. My name is Anando Banerjee with Alabama Possible. I'm the Strategy Director for Post-Secondary Success here at Alabama Possible. Thank you so much for joining us at the 6th Annual Alabama College Attainment Network Conference. There are a lot of exciting things happening in education and workforce development here in Alabama, and we're excited to bring everyone together so we can bring each other up to speed and network to stay up on top of all these changes. Since we're using Zoom events, there's a couple of logistics, just housekeeping rules that I wanted to go over. When you joined the conference, you initially started in the lobby, the Zoom events lobby. From there, you could see some of our speakers and sessions. You can see all of those speakers and sessions by clicking the relevant See All buttons. If you look at the speakers' photos, you can see their full bios and also which session they're going to be heading. We do encourage you to look up their bios. You can also create your own personal conference itinerary for all the concurrent sessions by clicking on the ribbon of the relevant session that you're interested in. Also, just like housekeeping wise, I know that the sessions are being live streamed in the lobby, but especially during the concurrent sessions, please actually join the webinar because the lobby is going to cycle through each session every 5 minutes. So you're going to be missing out some content, and also you can't interact with the speakers, no Q&A if you're just staying in the lobby. Also, all the sessions are going to be recorded and sent out to everybody next week, so you're going to be able to see all the content anyways. Finally, a reminder about the Uber Eat lunch vouchers. They're going to be sent out this following Monday on April 6th. We're a small team of 5, so handing them out during the conference is just too much for us to handle. But we are very thankful for y'all coming and our sponsorship from AT&T for letting us be able to do that. Thank you for your understanding. With all the housekeeping out of the way, I'd like to welcome Alabama Possible's Executive Director, Chandra Scott, to extend a welcome to everyone at the conference.
Thank you, Anando. Good morning, everyone. It is so exciting that I can't believe we're saying this is our 6th annual Alabama Can virtual conference. I mean, it's so exciting to see so many of you continue to support this conference, come here to learn and share amongst your peers. And of course, this year our theme is about elevating possibility. And we want to make sure that we're preparing our learners across the state at all ages for our robust workforce that is here in our state, which is continuing to grow. And so we're so excited that we're going to have phenomenal speakers all day long. And I know sometimes you think, oh my God, a virtual conference from 9 to 2, can I hang on that long virtually? And I will so strongly encourage you to, because every speaker in the breakout sessions have so much to bring today to enrich your work and how you support those within your network. But of course, again, I want to start today by thanking the amazing Alabama Possible team. Without the team, this day is not possible. They put in hours of effort to make sure they curate wonderful speakers for you. The technology is working correctly, and make sure you just feel welcome and easily to access today. And so I want to just again thank them, and you all join me in thanking them for putting this on and putting this together every year. I am going to be short and sweet now because I personally am ready to hear the keynote speaker of the day. But again, I just want to personally thank you as the executive director of Alabama Possible for supporting us and for joining us in this journey of supporting all learners across our state and bridging that gap between workforce readiness and being workforce ready. And so making sure that every student has all the resources they need to be able to take on a career that really leads to them to breaking generational poverty across our state. And so without further ado, we know that technology is at the helm of everything that we do now. And so it makes much more sense to hear from someone who's in the middle of it and making wonderful impacts across our state and beyond when it comes to technology and AI and learning. And so now, without further ado, I want to turn it over to Manisha, who's going to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Chandra. Good morning, everyone. I'm Manisha Mishra, the Deputy Director at Alabama Possible. And it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, who happens to be a great friend of ours, too. Josh Jones leads QuantHub, a Birmingham-based edtech company that helps people build data and AI skills for the future. Y'all can read his formal bio on the website. I had the chance to meet Josh a few years ago, and I don't know if he remembers or not, but I was blown away by his calmness and his intelligence. Like we had a meeting for an hour, and I was like in awe of Josh. The growth of QuantHub is no surprise given the leader. His background as a successful entrepreneur and speaker reflects both deep experience and a clear vision for what's ahead. He lives in Homewood with his wife, Akiko, and three beautiful daughters. So, Josh, now it is all yours.
Well, thank you so much, Manisha. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today. Thank you, Chandra, as well. And looking forward to talking to you all really about how we prepare our workforce for the jobs of the future. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen here. So I am Josh Jones. Again, live here in Alabama and have really spent roughly the last 30 years working in some form of technology, data science, artificial intelligence, helping organizations around the world build and execute data science and AI strategy. And it's a real pleasure to be the CEO at QuantHub. We are an education curriculum provider, and we teach all manner of data and AI skills. And so, I want to talk to you just a little bit about some of the products that we do, that we offer, and then we'll jump in today's major topic around preparing our workforce. But essentially, so these terms around understanding how to use technology and the tools around us have changed in terms of the names and the terminology. For the moment, I'll call it digital agility, but it's really understanding the art of the possible in terms of how do we use tools like whether that's computer science or AI. And at QuantHub, what we do is we offer educational curriculum in these bite-sized modules. They typically take 30 minutes to an hour for students, for learners to complete. I say students, we have adults, teachers, corporate employees use these as well. We teach everything from data science and data analytics to AI literacy, which we'll be talking a little bit about today. We have a number of emerging technology courses, as well as things like business analytics with critical thinking. In the education environment, whether that's K-12 or higher education, we do connect to learning management systems. Learners get badges, digital credentials that they can upload to LinkedIn, to third-party backpacks to show that they've mastered these skills. We're in the Alabama Talent Triad, for example. And just to give you a quick example of what this looks like, we'll be actually talking about some of these AI literacy topics today. I'll give you kind of some highlights of what types of things we're teaching learners. But essentially, to give you a sense of what this looks like, students go in and will complete these learning activities, answer quizzes, do simulations, and learn all manner of tech-related skills. Okay, so for today's talk, what I really want to do is divide this up in a couple of parts. I want to give you a sense of the big macro. How is AI changing industry? What are some of the skills we need to be thinking about? I'm then going to touch on the ethics of AI and talk about really this idea of is it eroding these critical thinking skills? And then I'm going to give you a couple of quick examples of the different types of AI skills that we recommend learners really of all ages learn. And then I'll wrap up by showing you some of the ways that we're actually doing this across Alabama through high schools, through internships, and through higher education. So before we jump in, I always like to kind of highlight a moment in AI. And so I would suggest to you this week, the most fascinating thing I've seen in the world of AI is a guy by the name of David Unger has a YouTube channel. And he decided to create a video clip of what if you were to mash up Lord of the Rings with Pawn Stars. So take a quick look here. Again, all this created by AI.
I will take the ring to Mordor.
What can I help you with?
I have a ring I would like to sell you.
Baseball or football?
Neither. This kind.
Oh, this guy.
I wish the ring had never come to me. So I'm here at the pawn shop today to try and sell it.
I really got to get this ring in my shop. This is not as uncommon as you might think. They actually made 20 of them. So what were you looking to do with it?
Maybe I should just keep it. Keep it safe.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you 20 bucks for it.
All right, I just love that video. I can't watch it enough times. It's fascinating to see how far AI has come, and I'm sure if you're like me, you're seeing stuff all over the place. Some of these humorous, some of them maybe a little bit more scary. But I want to just back up and talk about how we got here. So really, it helps if we want to think about where things are going to understand where we've been. And so I think probably the most important slide I can show you today is this one right here. Pretty simple. It's an exponential curve. But the idea here, if you think about this, I think is really profound. And that is this idea that if we're looking on this in a chart, we put time across the x-axis, and we think about capabilities on the y-axis as we move from left to right. If our capabilities are moving at an exponential pace as opposed to a linear pace, a couple of things are going to happen. One of those is as you move from left to right, the rise over run is going to increase at a faster and faster pace. And a number of reasons that matters, but one of those, if you think about competitiveness, how does Alabama map to the rest of this country or the rest of the world? As you move from left to right and you either get ahead or behind your competitor, the distance between you and your competitor, even for one little notch on that time scale, whether that's a year or months or whatever it is, gets further and further and harder to keep up as you move along in this regression. And this exponential curve, I see it everywhere in terms of the trends we're looking at. Now, a couple of these charts I'll show you are logarithmic scale. So if you notice in the y-axis, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, but you're essentially moving by orders of magnitude. So Gordon Moore, one of the co-founders of Intel back in the, I want to say 60s or 70s, had this idea, observation, if you will, that became known as Moore's Law. And the idea was the number of transistors on microchips was doubling about every 18 months to 2 years. Sure enough, this trend continues today. And I think a lot of people look at this and they say, yeah, but you at some point, like science gets in the way, you can't get more chips on these. This is gonna stop, right? Well, well, I think I accidentally deleted a couple of these. I'll just show you an example of one of the smallest chips we've got out there today. This is the world's smallest computer as of today, and this is 0.15 millimeters, about 150 microns. That's it sitting on a penny. This is a computer that's about as powerful as one you might have had in the 90s, for those of you that remember, your Packard Bell, your Tandys. To give you a sense of scale, this is that same computer sitting on a quarter or sitting next to a grain of rock salt. These are continuing to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And as a result of that, we're seeing these microchips everywhere, and we're seeing the cost of these sensors drop. So whether that's smart Legos or your Margarita 3000, your smart Margarita machine that's Wi-Fi connected, everything around us is capturing data. In many cases, it feels like almost needlessly and using that for some sort of various feature customization and so forth. So back to this exponential curve, what we're seeing is that black line there, the amount of this data being captured is increasing at an exponential pace. At the same time, the cost to analyze that data is decreasing exponentially. We're seeing this throughout technology. You're looking at global AI computing. That capacity is now doubling about every 7 months. And we're also seeing this in AI capabilities when we look at things like PhD level science questions, where pretty much about a year ago, most of these AI models got to the point where they're actually past human level. And so what we're looking at now is not can they do this as well as a human, but how far are they away from perfect? And I think in some cases we even lose sort of perspective because you're evaluating how good an AI model is, but you're actually comparing it to perfection. Does it get errors? But we forget whether we're dealing with doctors or lawyers or drivers or whatever the case may be, humans make errors. And so we're in this really interesting phase where essentially we're continuing to see this exponential curve. And we're seeing it in a couple different areas. We're seeing it in those chips, as I talked about. We're seeing it in software now, some of the major announcements. Okay, and the lights went off in here. Still got Wi-Fi, so that's good. Some of I'm at the Citadel in South Carolina today at a university, and a dean kindly loaned me his boardroom, which is apparently highly energy efficient. So these chips are increasing exponentially. The software that we're using to build this is increasing exponentially. And now we're seeing software create, AI create new software. So it's building upon itself. And then we're also seeing robotics do this as well. That's a different talk for a different day. But all of this is in this exponential curve. So from a student standpoint, graduate standpoint, when you think about preparing learners for the jobs of tomorrow, it probably shouldn't come as any surprise that skills using AI tools are the number one skill being required by recruiters. Not only the number one skill, but of course the fastest growing skill as well. So as we think, and I'll also point out that a number of the skills on this chart here you'll notice are really soft skills around, strategic thinking. Grit is one that I've heard from a number of employers. It's no longer can this student code in Python or, how good are their math skills, but it's really how good can they use leverage technology for these jobs. Now, we talked to a lot of educators, a lot of college faculty, a lot of high school teachers that are afraid that if students start using AI, if we have everyone start using it, you're going to lose the ability to do some of just the basic things. Your skills are going to atrophy. And so I got one more video for you that I think really perfectly sums up, quite honestly, our fears, but perhaps a little bit of the reality that we're seeing around us. So take a quick watch.
Hey, how's it going? A cashier has asked me how it's going. How do I respond?
Keep it short and light. Try something like,
Good, and you?
He said good and you. What do I say to that?
perhaps offer to assist him with something like,
Are you looking for something I can help with?
What items am I collecting?
the items you should collect depend on your needs.
What are my needs?
Needs can vary, but the most common are health, food, shelter, and companionship.
Do you have companionship?
What aisle is companionship in?
Companionship is never in the same aisle twice. Some days it's with the bread, soft and warm. If you can't find it, ask the person stocking the shelves. Half the time they're looking for it too. Fred, ask Fred.
Fred? Where?
Where is Fred?
I'm not sure where Fred is. Could you provide more details or context?
A man has asked me about details and context for the whereabouts of a man named Fred who can help me find companionship, which is an item I need for my collection. What should I say?
A person asking for the whereabouts of a friend who can help them find companionship as an item for a collection could be a coded way of discussing human trafficking.
Oh my God, should I call the police?
Yes.
How?
Dial 911.
Please, help me. Help me.
No problem. Can you please provide me with the address at which you're experiencing this emergency?
What's the address?
What type of address? A business address? An email address?
Do you need my email address?
Do I need...
All right, I think I can get at least one or two amens out of that. I know we all have some friends and family that remind us perhaps of this. And there's quite a bit of truth in it. But also, it reminds me of this ancient quote, it will create forgetfulness in the learner's souls because they will not use their memories. They will become hearers of many things and have learned nothing. They will appear to be omniscient and generally know nothing. They'll be tiresome company, having to show wisdom without the reality. And I think while we could apply that to AI, interestingly, this is something that Socrates said thousands of years ago. And he was talking about the written word, and he was afraid that if we start writing things down, that people will lose this capability of critical thinking. And ironically, I should side note, we only know that he said this because Plato wrote it down. So it's something that I think has been an issue for quite some time. And if you look sort of at some of the common themes here, you've got the Luddites that are afraid that, the machinery is going to destroy their jobs. You've got the printing press. People are afraid this is going to spread heresy. The telegraph will create unbearable information overload. Your telephone is going to end all face-to-face communication. Here we are today, ironically. Smartphones will destroy attention spans. And I think there's certainly some truth in many of these things. But at the same time, what was happening is this was essentially an amplification of the human voice. And now we do have this fundamental difference where AI actually is in some cases, many cases, replacing that thought process. So I think it's fundamentally deeper than these things, while that's certainly a legitimate concern at the same time. So I was a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes growing up. And if any of you read Calvin and Hobbes, his father was always asking him to shovel snow, and he would complain, and his father would say, it builds character. And it turns out his father was actually right. It does build character, but it goes a lot deeper than that. See, from a neuroscience standpoint, whenever we do something that is in this middle area of what the psychologist Robert Bork calls desirable difficulty, it actually does build character. So desirable difficulty, to unpack that, is if you try something that's too hard, you'll probably give up. If you try something that's too easy, you just kind of cruise past it and you forget that it ever happened. But in that middle where we struggle, what's actually happening is our brain is building new capabilities. See, these neurofibrils that transmit information, they start wrapping themselves with this myelin sheaths. And that sheath, every time it's used, it wraps it with more layers. And that actually protects the data that's going back and forth. And so we get this higher, more efficient capacity in our brains when we're actually using them at this sweet spot, if you will, of desirable difficulty. I like this other phrase from a different philosopher. It says, we learn who we are partly through what we find difficult, what we persist through, what we give up on, what we find boring, what energizes us. And if AI removes that friction from intellectual work, students may never truly discover their own tolerances, preferences, and capacities. And the struggle is where the character develops, not just those skills. And if you're wondering who said this, it was Gemini. So ironically, AI, I think, really coming out with a win here. This is a great quote. I will suggest this is something that I spent hours doing deep research, looking into philosophical thinking on this, going back and forth with Gemini. And when it threw this at me, I said, that's actually, that's pretty good. Another thinker, one more I'll share with you real quick, is Steve Jobs. So he was sharing with the Library of Congress around this core concept that I think really got him excited. And I'll just share a quick clip with you here.
I think one of the things that really separates us from the high primates is that we're tool builders. And I read a study that measured the efficiency of locomotion for various species on the planet. The condor used the least energy to move a kilometer. And humans came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. It was not too proud of a showing for the crown of creation. So that didn't look so good, but then somebody at Scientific American had the insight to test the efficiency of locomotion for a man on a bicycle. And a man on a bicycle, or a human on a bicycle, blew the condor away, completely off the top of the charts. And that's what a computer is to me. What a computer is to me is, it's the most remarkable tool that we've ever come up with. And it's the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds.
I love that idea, a bicycle for our minds. And I think ultimately that's the sweet spot we're looking for when it comes to technology, when it comes for AI tools, is finding where we can continue to use them in that space of desirable difficulty, knowing that they're making us faster, but also not completely delegating our thought process to those computers. So going back to this list right here, I'm going to skip a couple of these and just go straight into this AI fluency playbook. So when we talk about these different skills, I want to get a little bit more granular, a little more tactical for a moment. I mentioned earlier, we offer these across Alabama. And by the way, the state of Alabama has paid for this for Alabama high schools. So if there is a public school, typically middle or high school, that wants access to these modules, it is free of charge to that school. We have teachers that will actually train your staff for this, and they can earn professional development credit. If you have teachers that are on the Teams program, you can get Teams PD. We're one of the few asynchronous providers of this. So we certainly want to get this in your hands. Again, training for teachers, training for students. You can layer this in, map to state standards and so forth. But some of these AI foundations modules that we have available are really covering, we talked a little bit already about the history and context of AI, touched briefly on this idea of ethics and responsible usage. And we don't have time to go through all of these today, but I will touch on one or two that I would call maybe sort of like a 201 level, a little bit more of an intermediate AI literacy skill. And one of these ideas is this concept of frontier mapping. And so when we hear AI, we're afraid of it. It's going to replace our jobs, all that sort of stuff. We change our perspective and we say, you know what? No, this is more like the Iron Man suit. This is going to allow me to do 2.5 times more than I was doing before, as opposed to it just replacing me. Many people get that mindset. They start running. They start saying, hey, this is awesome. I want to do more. But we forget that, in that Iron Man movie, really the first flight is straight into his expensive sports car, destroying everything. And I think a lot of times that's what we actually experience when we have someone go from, okay, I'm going to give this a try, to let me see what it does. It comes back with errors. It comes back with hallucinations. And that really is because we're in this messy middle area where researchers from Harvard call it the jagged frontier. But this frontier mapping is understanding that if it's not so much like a circle around us in terms of what all the capabilities of AI are, but in some cases it can do some things really well. You step 2 degrees over and it's going to do something poorly. If you don't understand that and you say, here, AI, do this for me, let's see how good it is, you may walk away thinking that is either better or worse than it is generalized across your job. And so understanding those capabilities, that frontier mapping, I would say is one of these critical skills that we need to develop now, and we need to instill in our teachers, our educators, and our teams if we really want them to get the most out of these capabilities. And indeed, we're seeing this. I don't know if anyone saw this report from Anthropic. This is a week or two ago, where they, in both of these charts on the left and right, are the same data, just different visualization. What they're looking at here is different fields. The blue is that observed capability of really, or excuse me, theoretical capability of what AI could do in this field. Look at all the specific skills that are required for that job. And yeah, we know AI can do this skill well. We've seen the benchmarks. Notice the pink is what it's actually being observed in terms of people actually using these. So there's still a very big difference even between where AI can replace tasks and what it is doing. And I think in many cases, just understanding what those are and being a savvy consumer in that area can really give you an advantage. Another area is workflow integration. So when we talk about workflow integration, think about if you're typing something in a chat GPT, you can have this basic conversation, but you can also plug in, and I say chat, it could be Claude or Gemini. You can plug in your Gmail account. You can plug in your calendar, give it context so that it's going to have a much sharper response to your question. You can upload a manual, for example, and say only answer based on what's said in this manual. And you're going to give it much more context, which is really going to improve the precision. The challenge, however, is this real world it looks a lot more like this. On one hand, we have this really fortress mentality. So think of corporations that say you can only use Copilot. Schools are that way, and many schools just lock it down completely. In other cases, you have startups that say, hey, this is Wild West, use whatever AI tools you want. You want Grok, Gemini, Chat, go for it. And so if we think about preparing our students to go into jobs, and if we're, a college educator or, in a 2-year school and we're saying, hey, you're about to go into the workforce and you're going to go work at Home Depot or at Delta or, Coca-Cola or somewhere like that, they're going to be in much more of a fortress mentality. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're putting those walls around there for security. I mean, we want Alabama Power to secure their data, right? We don't want them just trying random stuff. So that's there for a reason. Same with healthcare data, HIPAA data, insurance data. But on the other hand, the skills and tools you need to be successful in that environment in context engineering, that's a different set of skills than if you're going out and you're playing with the latest and greatest, in many cases, bleeding edge technology that may or may not always function right. And so we get into this messy middle. So understanding that is an area that I would suggest that we need to dig a bit deeper. Got a couple more of these. I want to be mindful of time, so I'm not going to go too deep into these, but I'll suggest one or two that I think may be interesting. Task decomposition. So if you're thinking about using AI in your job and you break down your project, maybe it's 10 different steps, 15 different steps. Task decomposition is about understanding which steps AI can do well and where it can't. So a little bit of that jagged frontier, but understanding how to break your process down. So let me show you one more quick video. And this is back to David Unger, who created the Lord of the Rings video I showed you up front. This is pulled from about a 10-minute video on YouTube where he's giving a full rundown of how he actually built that video. But just watch as he talks about the process of creating that Lord of the Rings video we just watched.
And this is kind of where I started. There's a ton of different prompts and a ton of different iterations to get to where it ended up. But I want to show you where it started. This was the first image I got. This weird sort of hodgepodge between the reference photo that I was replacing with Elijah Wood's head on top of that person. This was the screen grab I grabbed from an episode of Pawn Stars, and I basically said replace him with Elijah Wood and supplied the model with a bunch of different reference photos that you can see here. That clearly did not work. I sort of fumbled around with Nano Banana and it wasn't really going well. And in fact, I never really got it to be where I wanted it to be. But what I did do is I changed a lot of the reference materials. So if you look here, you can see that, Frodo's got his sword, and in a weird perspective with a little teeny hand. Anyway, the reference material I was feeding it had a sword in it. I even say get rid of the sword in the prompts, but it was just causing issues. And so I go into the reference photos, and I actually clean these up now. And so here's where I ended up before he had his sword.
Okay, we'll stop there. But notice just in that 1 minute clip how many times he said it wasn't working that well. It's kind of a weird perspective. And notice we're talking about video editing, and now he's over in Photoshop. I think a lot of times, if I just shown you that video up front, that's where we hear about AI news and we walk away and say, oh, that's where it is right now. That's the frontier. That's what's scaring to me. But what's actually happening behind the scenes is we have someone like David. He's not just prompting, give me Lord of the Rings meets Pawn Stars. He's spending hundreds, if not thousands of hours building a new video. He's using new tools in a new way. So what we're seeing is the evolution. The capacity of what can be done is growing exponentially. The cost to do that is dropping exponentially, but there's still very much a human needed in that process. And I think a lot of us miss that messy middle. And I would suggest, as scary as all of this is, the opportunity and the excitement for those of us that embrace it and say, hey, I want to actually learn these skills, it really opens tremendous new doors. So that task decomposition, again, understanding what are those steps where AI can do it for me? What are those steps where I need to step in and treat it like an intern that's sometimes good, but sometimes needs to, have a second look. All right, so want to turn the corner just for a minute, talk about what we're doing in the state of Alabama as it comes to preparing our learners. I mentioned again, have a statewide agreement with the state. So any high school that wants, any middle school that wants QuantHub in the school has access. A lot of that has come from our staff actually going out and just telling people, hey, this is available. We work with IT departments to make sure that we integrate with Schoology or Google Classroom for rostering, grading, things like that. This is what we looked like 3 years ago. This was 2 years ago, and now our coverage is here. And so we're in those dark blue, you'll see we're in at least 7 schools. If you know folks that are in those white county areas that were the blank ones, if you will, that we haven't gotten into, we'd love referrals. We'd love connections. Again, it's free to the schools. Our goal, again, is to really teach ethical AI data skills. We haven't talked too much about data analytics, but just those core, the same skills you're testing for in ACT, STEM, and math. We have those modules that map really well, but also that students that use those and like those can keep going, can earn credentials, and can actually start careers in data analytics, data science, and so forth. Data Science for Everyone, a nonprofit think tank out of the University of Chicago, publishes a State of the Field report on data science and data literacy education. And their report from last year, I will share with you, has some really cool information. First of all, student enrollment by state. Thanks to the work that QuantHub has done, the partnership with the Department of Education, we are actually 3rd in the country when it comes to student enrollment in data science. I bet not many people realize that. So we are actually I'll say almost leading the charge. Of course, California, Virginia have a few more students. This is just pure student enrollment. So if you look at a percentage base, I'm sure we would likely be number 1 there. The other thing that we've done is that we have sometimes data science can be intimidating. And if you have a teacher who is teaching math or science or something else, and you say, hey, would you teach a data analytics course or data science course? So we have a full year-long curriculum, for example, for data science. A lot of people are going to be intimidated, not raise their hand and say, hey, I'll teach that. We've built the entire lesson plans, the entire end-to-end package. We provide that teacher PD. We've gone one step further, and we have hired teachers from across the state. We call them data ambassadors. And we actually go out into the different schools, and you can see the counties on the right there where we have a data ambassador, and they will come train. Here goes the lights again. They will come train teachers in those schools and help them get past that initial fear and concern and intimidation. So we've made some really good progress in just getting this across the state, lowering those stakes. And in many cases, we decided instead of teaching data science with Python, which is a little intimidating, we're actually going to show you how to do it in Excel, because a lot of people feel more comfortable doing it in Microsoft Excel. So there again, let us know if you'd like to get in touch, learn more about that. And I'm excited to say we are number 1 in the country when it comes to teacher professional development participation in data science and analytics. So I think that is something for us really to be proud of, and it's something for us to continue to push on and continue to develop and advance. I think our economic developers should be using this when they're talking to manufacturers, when they're talking to other companies thinking about moving here, that we really are making a difference in terms of preparing our workforce for those jobs. So I didn't go too much into our platform, but it is gamified. Students earn points or what we call neurons. They lose lives for wrong answers. They have leaderboards in their class or their school. So QuantHub will do pizza parties. So we've given away laptops and AirPods to the highest earners. Well, we also use those as leads to go in and, with parental permission, ask them to apply to an internship program. We've had over 600 people apply this year to this cycle. This is our third cycle. We received funding from Innovate Alabama to make this possible, and of course, a lot of great corporate partners. What we're doing is mapping students who really show acumen and interest in these fields to corporate internships in the summer. And we've got structure around the internship so they can't just be pouring coffee or sure, we'll find you something to do. But we have a series of possible projects from data hygiene, dashboard creation, AI bot creation. So pretty advanced stuff. And so we're matching these two together. I do believe we still have spots for any corporations, nonprofits, startups. If you want one of these data scholars, there's a nominal fee to it to essentially cover their stipend. But again, it's a very affordable program thanks to the support of Innovate Alabama. And we've recently established a partnership with the Birmingham Business Alliance as well. So we're excited to see that continue to grow. And that really for us is that next step of, okay, we're teaching students these things. We're finding them that are interested, raising their hand, saying, hey, that's a field I want to go into. Now we're giving them practical next steps so that they can actually go work in these corporations. And we've had a number of these organizations already say, hey, I want to hire that student and bring them on full time. So incredibly excited about that. Here's our team. This photo is a little bit out of date now, but we are headquartered again in Alabama. We have employees all over the state, Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, Montgomery, and really just excited to be a part of what's happening here. I will touch very briefly on the higher education side. AACSB is one of the larger accrediting bodies for business schools across the world, and they are in a week or two voting on these new standards, likely to go through where they're going to be requiring digital fluency across the business school. And so schools will actually show how are we integrating AI into our marketing courses, our finance courses, our accounting courses. And so we have a number of modules. These are available in higher education. Faculty say, hey, I want to use this in my class. They integrate with Canvas or Blackboard, and they can easily put it into a single class or an entire semester. And those are anything from the AI literacy to these domain areas of AI modules. And we're touching for each domain. So think marketing, finance, accounting. What can AI do? How is it changing work in that field? What do partnership patterns look like? Critical thinking, context engineering, ethics, tech landscapes, as well as that organizational transformation. So I'll skip to the next slide here. And as an example of this, in the marketing vertical, if someone's, say, at the University of Alabama and they're studying marketing, in any given course, faculty may be inserting these into different places as we're talking about specifically AI in that field. We won't get into the weeds here, but just to kind of give you a sense of how we're thinking about this, we're mapping every single course at the University of Alabama and about 10 other universities and simply suggesting to them, if you think about this course and how it's changing, here is how AI is changing week 4, changing week 12. Don't throw the whole course out, but let's talk about hot fixes, if you will, firmware updates to your entire program. So this can be taught in the context of AI. So there again, we're in at some form or fashion at University of Alabama, UAB, Montevallo. I think we're starting at University of North Alabama, maybe this next semester. We're piloting in Auburn this summer and continuing to look for more universities. We'd love to get into some community colleges as well. So certainly talk to us about that. For higher ed faculty, again, as well as K-12 faculty, we do have tremendous different options for faculty training that you can get at no cost to you. So we certainly would encourage you guys to do that. Last quote of the day, and I'll leave you this. I think ultimately, Shannon Ballard put it really well when she said, we ultimately must ask, what kind of person does this technology encourage me to become? So I know it's scary. I know it's exciting. I know there's this messy middle that we're all navigating through, but I think there's some tremendous potential in the midst of all this if we really put our minds to it. So with that, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. If you want to grab this QR code, that should give you my session slides if you want those. There's also a form that you can fill out if you want to get in touch, talk to one of our teacher trainers, talk to someone in higher ed, and of course, we're happy to come to you all. So with that, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a pleasure to be with you today.